But for this very reason, given all diligence, add to your faith virtue, to virtue knowledge, to knowledge self-control, and to self-control perseverance, and to self-control perseverance. The Bible tells us that if we want to be fruitful and productive in our knowledge of God and as people in general, then we need to add to our faith. And it gives us steps or principles that as we grow in God, we're to add these things to our faith. And faith, I can't say it enough, is the foundation for your salvation. Faith in God alone saves. But as you are saved through your faith, there are certain things you need to add. Add to your faith, and as you grow, certain things will be deposited into your walk. And God is very particular in what to add to your faith. And he brings us to perseverance, which is patience. And he tells us to add to our knowledge, our faith, and our virtue, perseverance. This step in your growth is crucial because no matter how much knowledge, no matter how much faith you have, if you don't persevere in your faith, then the book of James, the Apostle James says that if you see a man that says he has faith and have not works, can his faith save him? Because faith without works is dead. And then no matter how we add, we can have virtue, but not perseverance. In other words, we can do good things, but if we don't have perseverance and we give up on doing those good things, what have we accomplished? And we can have knowledge. So add to your faith virtue, add to your faith knowledge. And we can have knowledge and we can know God's word, but if we don't persevere in what we know, what have we accomplished? So we come to this step in growth of perseverance, and it's a very important step because this step activates everything up until now. And perseverance is very important because if you see anyone who is successful in any way, it was because they persevered. There's really no such thing as overnight success. There's no such thing as success without effort. There's really no such thing as success without going through something to get there. And if we even look at the natural world, Henry Ford, which, he didn't always have it right as far as his thinking socially, but on the business side, he's a great example of a person who persevered. We know the Ford Motor Company that is alive and well today and sells such models as the F-150 and the Mustang and iconic brands like the Thunderbird. We know about the success that was produced by Henry Ford. We still have it with us today. But Henry Ford failed at his first company. He failed. He had to leave that company. And he persevered and started the second company, which we know today. And when he started that company, he became famous for the Model T. But if you notice, the Model T alphabetically T is preceded by A through S. And yes, as you may have guessed, there were models A through S, and they all either were only marginally successful or they failed outright. So he persevered. Even though his first company failed, he persevered. Even though his first multiple cars weren't all that great of success, he persevered till he got to the Model T. When he got to the Model T, as they say, the rest is history. Thomas Edison, the inventor of the light bulb, incandescent light bulb, he failed thousands of times trying to find the right filament that would actually have longevity and wouldn't blow almost immediately. And he was once asked what kept him going. Why did he keep going after so much failure? And he said that every failure basically taught him what wouldn't work. In other words, he said he had invented 1,000 ways that wouldn't work. His goal was, his perseverance was, he had to find what would work. And every time he tried something that didn't work, he wrote it down and made a note and said, well, that didn't work. But he didn't give up. He persevered and went on. As they say, the rest is history. We have light bulbs everywhere, and they're up until the LED, they were all based on the incandescent light bulb that Thomas Edison or his lab invented years and years ago. And so you may be facing something in life that you feel like giving up. You may be facing something in life that you say is just not worth it. But I'm telling you that if you add to your faith perseverance, and I'm not saying necessarily you have to stay doing the same thing, but what I'm saying is what God has, the mission and the method don't always match up. What God has for you and what you're put on this earth to do, then the mission is yours, but the method that brings about that mission, it may change. You may move and shift, but the mission stays the same. And so don't give up. Don't throw in the towel, but persevere through difficult times. Because if you persevere, whether it's this or that, God will prosper you in due season. And I want to use this analogy, this illustration as I finish up here. But there was a grandfather, and he had his first grandson. And when his grandson got up a little age, he was about 5 years old, he went to spend some time with his grandson because he wanted to pour into him and teach him the things that he knew and had experienced. So he goes to get his grandson, and on this particular day, he had to run some errands, and he had to mail some letters. So he got his grandson, they got in the car, and he got the letters. When they got to the post office, he got out his letters and he pulled out some stamps and he began to affix the stamp to the letters. And just before he got out of the car, his grandson looked at him and asked him what was he doing. He said, well, grandson, I'm putting a stamp on this letter so that this letter will arrive in its destination, which is far, far away. And his grandson, with curiosity, said, how does that stamp move that letter to a place far, far away? And at first, the grandfather, thinking like an adult, began to explain to him about how the government produces these stamps and you can purchase them, and that allows that letter to move through the U.S. mail to some location somewhere. But he noticed as he was explaining that process that his grandson just really wasn't getting it. It's a little bit over his head. So he thought about it. He said, this is a teachable moment. I want to pour into my grandson. So he shortened the story and simplified it. He said, grandson, you see this letter and you see this stamp. This stamp is very small compared to this letter. This letter is hundreds of times larger than this stamp. But grandson, you want to know how this stamp gets this letter to a faraway place? And the grandson said, yes, grandfather, tell me, how does it get there? And the grandfather, without missing a beat, he said, the way this stamp, which is so small, gets this letter, which is so much larger, to a place far away, is it simply sticks to it. And we need to understand that that's what God is saying to us. Just like that grandfather told his grandson that small stamp can move a great big letter compared to that stamp simply by sticking to it. And he wasn't wrong. He wasn't wrong, because if that stamp is not affixed to that letter, if it falls off somewhere in the process, then that letter is returned to the sender. So even though the complicated things of how a stamp is made and purchased and all that, even though that's true, but at the basis of it all, that stamp is able to move that letter because it sticks to it. And that's what God is saying to you. Whatever you're going through, whatever you're facing, remember your mission and stick to it. Have perseverance.